Yeah, that lovely art was the Tropicana's attempt to spruce up the place about 10, 20 years ago. They had
Or offer some diversity. She looks like she could be a brown lady, but maybe not. She might just be sun-kissed.
Yeah. You never know. But Jen Kober, ladies and gentlemen, one of my favorite human beings on the planet. And we were in our little small talk while I was setting up the camera. You said you were homeless once?
Yeah, no. I mean, haven't we all been like without an apartment, lived in our car, right? Yeah. Like that's what I mean by homeless. I wasn't like on a street sleeping on a sidewalk or anything, but like, you know.
You weren't asking for change.
No. It was just like, shit, I can't afford my rent. And also I have to stay here. So, you know, I slept in my car.
Comedian homeless.
I showered at the beach. I peed at the Starbucks. There was
a guy who was a doorman at the Comedy Store. And he was living in his car, kind of a defiant. He didn't want to pay the LA rent. And he joined a gym.
That's exactly smart.
So he'd go to the gym and shower every day. And in the morning, he had the place to himself. And then.
Yeah, like you find a 24-hour fitness. Yeah, then you can go in there anytime. You can chill in the sauna. Yeah, that's a genius idea. Sadly, at the time, I did not even have money to join a gym. So I was just sort of. But I have this huge car.
Was this like the hardest struggle for you as a comedian? Is that like the
financial struggle?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, for sure. Especially at that time. That was I had just sort of left Louisiana and was trying to stay in LA full time and was estranged from my family. So wasn't trying to like I didn't have a lifeline to be like, hey, I'm short on rent. Yeah, shoot me some money. So, you know, I mean, I feel like we've all been through something like that.
I didn't live anywhere for 10 years. But I mean, I was doing the international circuits. But when I started out on the southern circuits, I didn't live anywhere. I was sleeping in my car.
Yeah, it's a lot. It was a lot. And I had friends that were like, come over, come stay with them. But, you know, you don't want to do that for an extended period of time. I was like, no, it's cool. Somebody would say, oh, come stay with us for a couple days. I'd stay there a couple days. And then I'd be like, oh, another friend is going to let me. And then I'd just go sleep on the street for a couple days in my car. And then, you know, luckily I also had a friend who had a house who I knew in worst case scenario, I could like park behind her house and it was safe. It was like in a suburb and sort of, you know, it was like in Burbank and I could just be there and not get messed with by anybody. So
right. So you're from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Is that where you started in Louisiana?
I did. I started stand-up in Louisiana in my little tiny hometown at a bar called D'Agostino's. Whoa. It was a pizza place.
I hope there's a historical plaque.
And what's funny is the lady who owned D'Agostino's ended up, you know, years later closing it down, whatever. And then she became a manager at the local casino. So I got hired at the casino because she talked me up to the casino people. Then when she left the casino and now she's at another bar/restaurant and she talked me up to that guy and I've been doing my shows at that guy. Like this lady has just
helped you all throughout
always helped me everywhere I go. Joanne Robbins, everywhere I go, she makes sure I have a gig. So God bless
you, Joanne Robbins. And I started out in Florida. So, you know, I think there's something about starting out in tough bar gigs. You know, I dealt with every kind of drunk heckler and, you know.
It builds your chops.
Yeah.
Right. And also like, not only did I have to be funny and do a good show, I had to get the people there, bark the people in, take the money at the door. Like it was a one-man show, you know? So it was, luckily I eventually connected with other local comedians and people from Houston and people from Beaumont and Lafayette and such. But at first it was all me. It was like, remember that sketch on In Living Color where they were from the Bahamas and they were like, the guy was the pilot, he was the stewardess, he took your bags. Like he did, it was the Bahamas airline where we do it all, man. You know, that's how I felt. Like I did everything. I would have made the drinks had they let me behind the bar. So that's what you do in the beginning, you know, you figure it out.
So did you do the Southern circuits or did you just like get good at one point and move to Los Angeles?
I don't know that there was a circuit at the time. There, you know, I was doing shows in Lake Charles. There was a club in Baton Rouge. There was
the Funny Bone.
Yes. And
Yeah.
then there were a couple of,
That was great until they moved to Bossier City.
right. And honey, that Bossier City one was, there was one in both places for a little while. And then now the one in Baton Rouge, the guy sold the club, but somebody else opened it as something else. And it's like a music venue, but they do comedy on Thursday. You know how it is.
When that Funny Bone it was under the bridge in Baton Rouge. That was a great club.
Yeah. It was right under the
I remember
interstate.
I was there in the summer once, and they downtown Baton Rouge, they had one of those like parks where the water shoots up and kids run through it.
Right.
And it was so hot, I went out and ran through I was like, hey man, it's
you
hot.
gotta get your relief where you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was no circuit. It was sort of me figuring out like bars that I could do venues in. And then, that was when MySpace was really kind of first hitting. So that was such a great tool. That was the first, exposure to social media we were all getting and realizing, oh, I can reach everyone in my town by just, putting little things up and videos up on this platform on the computer. And it was so helpful. And so once I started, selling out shows and, being funny, you can't just have sizzle, you got to have some steak. So once they figured out I was also funny, then people started coming every week, and I was doing a weekly show, and, I was making a couple of grand a week, and that's in that little town. I mean, I thought I was balling.
You were balling.
Like I bought a house. I was like doing my thing. And then Sinbad came to town.
Well,
he did a show at the casino, and I was working at the radio station, on the radio at the country music show in the mornings. And they asked me if I would go to the gig that Sinbad was doing because the radio was sponsoring it. And would I introduce him? And I was like, of course. And so I showed up, and of course I did 20 minutes of material in front of Sinbad because he thought I was going to introduce him and he was going to go right up. So he was right there ready to go.
Right.
So I did some material. I did some time, and he loved me. And when he got out there after I introduced him, he did like 10 minutes about me. And so it was great. And everybody was screaming and everything. And when we were done, he was like, man, you're really funny. What else do you do? And I was like, I'm here. This is what I do. And he's like, no. You gotta get out of here. You can't just stay here. You're never going to be anything here. You're going to be a big fish in a little pond. You got to go somewhere.
Right.
And he called John Fox and got me into the San Francisco comedy competition. And
used to be a star maker.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
That was it. He put me in that competition, and that competition had long since seen its day.
Yeah.
But what I got to do was network with that many other headlining comedians and figure out, oh, there's a circuit to this, right? I started doing Tribble runs, and I started doing.
You did those tough Montana, Idaho gigs?
Yes. And again, I was prepared for that because I had been doing bars and stuff down south. And so this was nothing new to me, and it was really easy, and I did really well. So I kept getting those bookings. And then who was the guy out of Chuck Johnson, right? He did a whole bunch of stuff kind of in the middle. So he handled those middle kind of runs. And then I just sort of pieced it all together and made myself a little tour, and was in my car with my wife at the time. And we just, me, the wife, and the dog, just got in my old Pontiac Aztec and hit the road.
It's adventure.
Yeah,
it was fun living.
It was fun. It really was. We didn't have an apartment. We didn't have an address. We kind of used our parents' place to get mail and stuff, and we just made it work.
That.
And it was hard, but it was fun at the same time. I had everything in the, by the time when we would get to a hotel room, here's the printer and the computer and the laptop and all the wires, because we had to do all the MySpace things to get it. And then you had to apply for the gigs that you were trying to get the bookers to put you on for the runs, to kind of line it all up so you weren't, driving out of your way and stuff. And it was, you remember there were some of those gigs where if you didn't leave right after the show was over to start driving to the next night's gig, you weren't mathematically going to make it there. Yeah. So it was really a lot, but it made me strong at what I do. So
now, my favorite thing about you is you're such a powerful storyteller. Did you have this storytelling style when you started? Was it stories
not.
or because it's hard to hold a drunken bar.
Yes, with stories. With a story. So I feel like what ended up happening was once I figured out that storytelling was my thing and that's what I wanted to do, I had to figure out a way for the stories to eat those smaller jokes, right? Like so that I could put those one-liners and things that I had into this bigger story that I was trying to tell. So and that took me a little while to figure out, but once I did, it worked.
Yeah. Because you and I worked together at the MGM, and what you were closing with? What was that? I can't even remember. It was something about garbage or something. There was a candy and
there was
such a great story.
Yeah.
It's been a few years. I'm ashamed.
Yeah, there was
remember.
I found candy in the alley, and then on the floor, and then it was this big sort of longer story, and then at the end, I find a homeless guy and we're getting stoned together, and he's like, thank you for seeing me, thanks for sharing your weed with me. This was really cool. And I was like, dude, it's about to get better because there's a shit ton of candy in this alley. So it all kind of came full circle. And it was, that was a really, that's the set that I did for the special that Brad recorded for me over there last year. So.
Oh, Brad filmed a special for you? Wow.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Really nice. It's coming out on, it just got bought by 800 Pound Gorilla. Wow. So I think they're going to put it out on the platforms and the things, right? In May, probably. So. Yeah.
And you're headlining it. It's so great. When you ascend, like, I don't know how many times you had played at Brad Garrett's at the MGM when you and I worked together, but you were the feature. I mean, and you were like crushing it. Obviously, you were a headliner everywhere else in the world, and now you're headlining it at Brad's. And the staff, Brad, they're all like family. They're all such good people.
So nice. Always. I mean, you're getting emails 3 days ahead, like, hey, we're getting ready for you. Here, let us know if you need anything, and what can we get for you? And do you have anybody you want to put on the list? I mean, I just earlier in the year, the first 6 weeks of 2024, I did at Mad Apple here at the New York. And last night so that show is dark on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So last night was a Wednesday. I was like, Brad, what are we doing? Can I get some of these Mad Apple people in? He was like, honey, bring them all. Yeah. We got 210 seats, and he let 55 of those cast members into the show for nothing.
That's
and
great.
God bless them. I mean, they had a great time, and they were so thankful, like, oh, we never get to see stuff. And, because they're always working and always doing things. And
so Brad's there this week with you.
No, he's not. Oh. I think he's doing TV, but he calls me.
He's on another great show now.
Yeah.
And his name is Rhodes on his character. I was flipping through the channels, and it's a really great, well-written show.
It is. It's very good.
And his character's last name is Rhodes, and his daughter, they're like the Rhodeses. I'm like, what a great
I didn't
name.
even notice that. But yeah, he's on this show, and the show is very good. I'd watched the first season of the show. I haven't seen the second season, and he joined it second season, so I haven't seen anything that he's done other than clips, but the clips are hilarious, and he's so good. I mean, he's just
brilliant actor.
Yeah,
and
a little one-take Sally. You know, you can just
and your acting career has been pretty spectacular. So
you're sweet.
What's the trajectory of your career? Did you act like in Louisiana and like high school plays and stuff?
I did all of that. And then when I went to college, I went to an acting conservatory. So I went to the theater school at DePaul in Chicago, which was, just, it was all acting classes. There were academic classes you had to take to get your degree, but I kept dropping those. So I ended up getting my certificate in acting and then going to a little college in my hometown, McNeese, and I had to take like math and science for like a year and a half until I had all the credits I needed to graduate.
So was your original plan just to be an actor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So comedy just...
Well, no, actually I did stand up first. I started doing stand up when I was like 16. But I was what I like to call a cover comedian. I didn't know that the art form was about writing your own material. So I was 16 years old doing Thea Vidal's jokes, like talking about being a big black woman and having a 5-year-old. And I'm 16. I'm clearly a little fat white girl from the South. And I just didn't get it. I competed in speech in high school. So you did other people's material. That's what the gig was. So I didn't know that that's
hilarious. Well, that's something we have in common because when I started being a comedian at 17.
Yeah.
But 14 to 16, Rodney Dangerfield was my god.
Yeah.
And my father met some guy. My dad was an insurance salesman. The guy was like a local watchmaker. And my dad told him I wanted to be a comedian. So the guy hired me for like $50 to play to this watchmakers convention.
Wow.
And it was like in a little a conference room with maybe, 50, 60 older men, watchmaker guys, and they brought me in, and I was doing Rodney Dangerfield jokes, and it was like my wife, the exact same thing. It's like, and they're looking at me going, kid, you're 15, you don't have a wife. What are you talking about?
Watchmakers, wow.
Yeah,
they have real good timing in that show.
None of them got ticked off.
Well, Jimmy Dory saw me when I got to college, went to college in Chicago. I went to go play at the Funny Firm down on Grand in Chicago. Yeah. And it was an open mic, and I had brought my mother's whole side of the family, a shit ton of Greek people lived up in Chicago. So when I went to college up there, I told them I was doing stand-up at the Funny Firm. I didn't realize you had to sign up and you might not get on and whatever. Oh, well. So I told them I was doing it on this night, the night of the open mic. And so, 40 Greeks show up and I hadn't gotten on the list. And I was like, I go up to Jimmy and I'm like, Jimmy, I got 40 Greek people here. Like, please let me go up. And he was like, oh, you brought people? Oh, okay. And so he puts me on and I did some jokes and he was like, you are really funny. You have great timing. Your voices are spot on, but you got to write your own jokes, right? Like that's
so even at that point.
Yeah. Even at that, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was barely 18 years old and this was probably, the beginning of my semester of school.
So how did you first start figuring out writing, and what's your writing process now?
Well, now once I figured out, to me, that was so freeing. I was like, wait, what? I can write my own stuff? Oh, Jesus. Now it's a whole new ball game. Like in my head, I was just going to have to watch other people's stuff for the rest of my life and just memorize other people's words. And once I realized I could write my own stuff, I mean, it was fantastic. And I always I would think of something funny. I kind of write down a bullet point, or if I have a line that I think is funny or whatever, I write that down. And then I did it all on my feet. I'm not a sit down and write on a piece of paper kind of person. I would just, at the time I had a little Walkman that I would, with my cassette tapes, record my sets. And when I said funny stuff, I tried to say it again and kind of developed it that way. So.
And what about how you write stories now? How do you structure your stories? Because it's funny you mentioned my speech. High school drama speech teacher, Mr. Martin, gave me some of the greatest advice that I've used. Every story should have a definitive end and a beginning and an arc and how to build an argument in debating.
Yeah, I have to start with the end. I have to know where it's going to write the story. So I usually come up with the beginning and the end first, like where I'm going to start and where I'm going to take it so that it, comes back around. And then I fill the middle. And a lot of times I figure that out on its feet too. I was only doing a 12-minute set at Mad Apple, but that was almost a harder beast for me being used to doing an hour. I only have 10 minutes now. So you got to get out there and just start punching, you got to really and this show has so much energy. And so even doing a short set like that, I knew what jokes I wanted to do, but sort of crafting these pieces that are, separated in my act into one conglomerated thing. Even on its feet, I had to figure that out, like how that was all going to connect and how my segues were going to go and all those things. And so I do that on its feet. And I probably should do that workshopping it at open mics or things like that. But I need a crowd there. It's only going to go well.
You're still working the road relentlessly, right? So
yes.
I guess, when you're home and you're off, you don't really feel like going to open mic nights.
No. And, open mic nights are usually just not well attended by crowds. And so you end up doing your act for, the 14 new comedians that are in the back of the room who are going to blow smoke up your ass anyway, because they think you can help them get a gig. You know what I mean? So they just, that isn't conducive to what I needed done. And so I would, kind of work it out as I went. And, God bless the poor Mad Apple people have seen me do that set. I did 2 shows a night for 6 weeks. And then they came last night and heard that same 10 minutes at the beginning of my set. And then they got to kind of see where it goes and how it developed into something else. And they were all like, oh my God, we've only heard the beginning. So this was so cool to see you unfold it all and let us, peel back the onion.
The accordion,
Yeah.
pull it out. So Mad Apple is the Cirque du Soleil show that's at the New York casino. So I love Cirque du Soleil. What's that like? There's like trapeze artists
there are
stretching backstage and stuff when you're going on.
Yes,
right?
It's so insane. I had never been a part of anything like that, and I'd seen, I think, a Cirque du Soleil show. I think I saw the one that's in the water, right? And it was cool, but if you had said to me then you're going to be part of a Cirque du Soleil show, I'd have laughed in your face. But this one is, the premise of it is that it's a variety show sort of set in the streets of New York.
Oh, nice.
And
so you're a street performer. You're coming out. Okay.
So there's a juggler, there's a magician, there's a stand-up, there's a girl hanging from her hair. There's these guys on this hamster wheel of death, that come out and do this. There's guys doing sort of Harlem Globetrotter basketball tricks with all the jumping around and trampolines and stuff and backflips and such. And and then there's musicians and singers and all sorts of stuff. And it's a very fast-paced, fast-moving show, but you've got to bring it. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of, and there's a guy who, big guy. He's from Yugoslavia. His name is Dima. And there's this little tiny girl, and I don't even know her name. She's the smallest woman. I shit bigger than this girl. She's small. And he flips her up in the air and catches her, like while hanging from his feet. And then he puts a blindfold on and is flipping her in the air and catching her while blindfolded.
Wow.
Right? So I'm backstage and I'm saying to the stage management girl, I'm like, what's the trick here? Like, can he really see through the blindfold or what's? And she goes, no, these guys are circus performers from Eastern Europe. Like, this is what they were trained. This is what their whole family does. This is what they do. And this is what they've been trained to do since they were children. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I couldn't believe it. And every time we would come down from curtain call to get back into the green room, Dima was in front of me. So he would always hold the door for me. And I would always, thank you. But I never wanted to really make eye contact or make him laugh or distract him at all, because I thought he's going to drop that little girl if I pull his focus. This little bitch has no idea that I'm saving her life every night by just being quiet and not distracting him. But
who's the little woman? Is she like a cousin of his?
I don't know. They clearly knew each other before this. They both speak the same language, but I didn't ever talk to her because she was in a different dressing room, and again, I just didn't want to pull their focus away from like what they were there to do. It's what I know how much focus it takes me to get up and tell jokes for 12 minutes twice a night. You can, that's an easy gig. That's not hard for us. But
that feeling when you're, it happens to me in LA a lot where some young comedian will come to me and he'll start talking and I'm going on stage in like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And I'm trying to think of like my structure, what new things, and there's just this glazed look, and you're nodding at them.
Yes,
cool,
exactly.
Cool.
No, that's great, man. I'm glad you saw me on that show. Cool. I'm gonna go over here and prepare my instrument.
What are your greatest stories? What stories are you the most proud of?
I did a story about Girl Scout cookies a while back that I really liked, and people ask me all the time, oh, you didn't do the Girl Scout cookie story. I did it once. I did it for an NPR show called Snap Judgment.
Oh, I did Snap Judgment once.
Yeah.
I told a story about almost drowning in Thailand.
Yeah, right?
And it was cool too. The sounds they put under like, the ocean and bubbling.
Yeah.
It was cool.
It's an amazing show. And I ended up touring with that story, with that show. But I wrote that for the show. I didn't write it. It's not in my act. It's not like I took a story from my act and put it on stage. I wrote the story.
But you got a lot of fans from it. Yeah.
Right. And it went crazy viral. And everybody it's about when I was a little girl as a brownie selling all these Girl Scout cookies. And so I started getting messages from troop leaders and moms and, oh, they played it for this and that and the other. And I ended up booking the Girl Scout Leaders Convention, the national convention. And they gave me cash and a shit ton of Girl Scout cookies.
And a storyteller badge.
That would have been awesome. A nice storyteller patch. But it was really great. So I was really proud of that story.
What was the point of the story?
My mom was our troop leader. And so we all, after you ordered all the cookies, and I didn't even know cookies were going to be part of it. I thought I was just going to have to go to these meetings after school with these other girls and do civic sort of minded things, volunteer at old folks' homes and stuff. And when they were like, no, we're selling cookies, it was like a whole new ball game. I was right back in it. I was like, yeah. And my mom was the troop leader. So, there's a release date for the cookies. So we had to keep all the cookies at our house until the release date. So all these cookies are in our garage, and I was sneaking down every night with my library card and shimmying open the boxes of Girl Scout cookies and then eating. You had to eat the entire box. I had to eat the whole box of cookies and all the crumbs. And then I had a little glue stick, and I would glue the package back together and then glue the flap back together and put that box at the bottom of the other big boxes, so that my excuse was going to be, if I got caught, clearly this is a factory defect. Factories make mistakes all the time. There's no cookies in these boxes, And sadly, in my cookie drunkenness, I left my library card inside one of the boxes. And my mother found it and beat my ass and was just not happy with me. And I was completely busted. And she had to pay for all the cookies. And like to this day,
you're still working.
She reminds me about remember those cookies? She's okay. Sorry.
You still owe $248
exactly worth of cookies. So she's very. And every time I'm with my mom and we see Girl Scouts selling cookies, she gives me one of those, evil eye sort of stares and like, don't you dare buy a box of those cookies. But I was addicted to the Samoas. Right? Do you remember those? They were the ones that were shaped like a ring. You put them on your finger, you eat them into a smaller ring. It was like a shortbread cookie with caramel on it and then fudge striped and like shredded coconut. Delicious.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the greatest cookie. And I was addicted to them. And so I would put one on each of my fingers and then take one bite out of each one. And then whichever finger finished first got another cookie. It was a very exciting prospect for me. But it ended up costing my mother almost $1,000 in cookies.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. I ate.
That's a serious crime.
Well,
we had
those
felony.
We had those boxes in our garage for a long, like 3 weeks, and I was going down every night. Like I had a little system. I was a little ninja, and it was quite. And the reason I'm so proud of that story too is because it really was just a memory I had of something happening that I made into this thing that became funny. You know what I mean? Like. It usually works the other way around for me. I think of something funny and then I think of a story that I also and sort of fuse the two things together. And this one was really organic and I wrote it down on a piece of paper because, they want to practice with you. You have to practice with the band and, right. On this word is when they come in. So you got to do it the same every time.
Yeah.
So what was so, what felt so good and made me feel so accomplished after doing that was that there was a process to it that I really followed and created something that was very good. So
that's beautiful. So now do you like just look back on your life like, oh wow, what can I make stories of?
What'll happen is something will trigger it. I'll hear a song and be like, oh my God, I used to roller skate to this song. Oh, remember at the roller skating rink when we would play that game, light as a feather, stiff as a board, and we'd try to lift some girl off of the ground with just our minds because we thought we could, stuff like that. So as things sort of start triggering memories and then, you start, I always talk it out. So I start telling the story, to my wife, or I start telling the story to my mom, or I start telling the story to my sister. And then my sister will be like, oh, that's not what happened. Don't you remember? You didn't have socks and they had to bring socks for you. And you had to wear this other kid's socks because it was a roller skating rink and you had to wear socks. And I was like, oh my God, that's right. So as you start sort of saying it to other people that were there and stuff, now you start remembering more details and whatever. And that, that's what's funny is the details.
It's all about everything. And in life also, it's all about the details.
Yeah.
In relationships, I think it's in style and clothing and jokes. It's always about the details.
And what I love about storytelling is that I can set the scene. I can be like, okay, here's what was happening. It was 1978. It is dark like this. This is happening. I'm wearing this. This is playing on the radio. I'm eating commercials and just little bits of things that you can throw in that people are going to remember or be like, oh my God, that's so funny. I used to do this. I have a story about my mom would always buy that brick of cheese, the American cheese, the 72 slices
Oh yeah.
box of cheese, because she did all her shopping at Sam's, right? You got to contemplate your life expectancy while you're shopping. Like, will I live long enough to eat this much cheese? Great. So
Or
my mom,
toilet paper,
right? Yeah.
I got a big thing of toilet paper from Costco last year, and I still think I got like 30 rolls.
I
left.
still have.
I haven't bought toilet paper in over a year.
I still have toilet paper from the pandemic.
Yeah,
because I lost my mind. But you know, in telling that cheese story over and over again, you know, people. My mom would be like, "Oh, you gotta tell them that this happened. You gotta tell them that this happened." And, you know, and what I used to do is I would fold the cheese into fours, and then I would make buildings that I would chomp down like I was Godzilla, and then I would take one of those little pieces of cheese and put it on the roof of my mouth and pretend like I had a cheese retainer, right? And just that little silly thing always got a laugh. That didn't get a big laugh, but the 12 people that laughed at that part of the story, I was like, oh, that's why I say it. You know, it's a fun little detail. So finding those little things ends up being sort of the fun of creating the story. And then, you know, as things move on and you're telling a couple of stories, then you realize, oh, I can relate these two stories under this bigger umbrella, you know, and so it all starts to come together. But it really is. I just get triggered by something, a memory or a TV show or some nostalgic thing happens.
I think that's your strength, and it's why you're so compelling to watch. And I don't know who said it, but the greatest gift we have to give is our story. You know,
agreed.
And you give so much of your life. You know, I've had people, and I always say, you know, people won't remember jokes, but like stories stick with people.
I agree.
Longer.
I agree. And I think also, you know, people don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. So, you know, the best comedy shows, and I certainly felt this after I saw you know, I was like, I don't even know what he fucking said. I just remember laughing the whole time, like belly laughing, like, oh my God, I love this guy the whole time, you know, that you were doing it. I just saw a video of yours come up the other day that was, what were you on? This Is Not Happening? And it was a story about you being drunk.
And the goldfish story. Yeah. And it's a true story.
They took my gold. Like, I didn't know where this story was going, because ultimately it's a shit story, right? Like it's a shit story, which we all have. Yeah. That's what the cheese wrapper story is, a shit story too. So eventually it's a shit. But then when you bring it back around to, and they took my goldfish, I was dying. I was like, I didn't see that coming at all.
Everyone expects to, like, oh, he's drunk, he's gonna drink the goldfish accidentally or something.
I didn't know why. I really was like, who cares about the goldfish? Tell us about how drunk you were. Like, I didn't even, to me, the goldfish was like a throwaway. I didn't see that coming back into the story at all.
You know, I didn't tell that story it wasn't until years later when I went back to Hong Kong and I was walking around and I saw that hotel, because it was like, it's still to this day one of the nicest hotels I've ever seen. It's the Shangri-La.
I mean, it's got to be gorgeous.
It's like so like beyond 5-star, and the whole, you know, like you were telling how you remember your stories. It all came back to me when I saw that building. This is like 5-6 years later after it happened, but the feeling that I had, because I had just really gotten wasted and I had done ecstasy and gone out. I was a total wild man, just partying my brains out. And, you know, there's the shame of shitting the bed, but the fact that they took away the goldfish, I felt like such a loser.
That was
they could not
funny.
have made a bigger point that you do not deserve to have a goldfish.
I had a buddy who used to tell a story at parties about how he had this board that he covered with fur. Like, he found some fur material that he stapled to this board, and he put a hole in the board, and he would fuck this board. That was how when he was a kid, when he was like 17, 18 years old, it was like a glory hole for him, right? Yeah. He would just kind of, and I always thought that was such an odd, bizarre story. And then one night, he's really drunk, and I was like, tell him about your board, man. You're not gonna believe this. Tell him about this board you had when you were a kid, right? And he starts telling the story again and he goes, you know what? A couple of years ago, I walked in and my my roommate had found the board and was using it. And the whole room gets like eerily silent. And he goes just like this. He goes, so if anybody's ever fucking your board, man, I know how that feels. We all just fell out. Like, where did that come from? But he just like in retelling the story, he just remembered like, oh man, you know what? A couple of years ago, he had forgotten about it because, I was making him tell this board story that I'd heard probably 5 or 6 years before. And so it's always funny what you will remember when you retell something. And I think that that's what you have to constantly do and tell it to people that were there or tell it to people that would know because they remember things you have even forgot, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, you're forgetting the best part of that story. When I would tell the cheese wrapper story, I didn't want my mom to know I would have to eat the whole box of cheese so she would know that it didn't. And I would say, you never bought cheese. I don't know what you're talking about, right? And I was flushing the wrappers down the toilet and then the toilet gets plugged up and my mom calls the Roto-Rooter man and the Roto-Rooter man comes back in the house with like thousands of cheese wrappers. And my mother's like, I knew I bought that fucking cheese, you little bitch. I can't believe you did this, right? And so it's this shit story. But when I was telling the story to my sister's like, oh my God, don't you remember she went off about how you didn't even tell the story right because she had to buy a new toilet? I was like, oh my God, that's right. So now, now that's how it ends. I said, my mother would want me to tell you all that she had to buy a whole new toilet, right? Jennifer, you didn't even tell those people I had to buy a whole new toilet. So I want y'all to know. Yeah, exactly. My mother doesn't care if it's funny. She cares if it's factually correct. So.
Well, what's your life like now? You don't drink? I don't remember you as a
I am not a drinker. I am not a drinker. I toke when I can, as I can. Though I have recently, I was getting stoned like every day, all the day. Once they made those vapor pens, it was very, because you can do it anywhere. Before you had to like separate the seeds and the stems and roll something up and find a place and get some people and it was a thing. And then you had to make sure nobody smelled it and all that. Now it's a pen in my pocket and I'm just sucking on it and it tastes like sweet tarts. They all taste like fruit
One
now.
of my favorite candies. For a man in his 50s, I still eat a lot of sweet tarts.
I agree. I'm the same way. Starbursts. I'm addicted to them. So it was just such sweet, wonderful flavor. And I was just sucking, oral fixation. I'm just sucking on it all day long. And, finally my wife sat me down and was like, babe, I don't think you realize what's happened. You're a little edgy. You're a little, and I was like, come on. Everybody always gets on me about this. Right. And then we were in New York right before I came here to do the Cirque du Soleil show. And I was at the APAP conference, which is all the Performing Arts Centers conference, showcasing, trying to get, more work. And a guy in front of us, because it's legal now everywhere, was smoking a joint and it smelled so awful to me as like a secondhand smoke kind of a thing.
Right.
And I was like, ugh. And the guy heard me kind of being like complaining about the smell. He was like, do you just want to toke? Like, you won't notice the smell if you have some.
Right.
And I was like, all right. So I took off this stranger's joint and it made me feel bad. I felt bad. I felt weird that I wanted it so bad that I was taking it from a stranger who could have had any number of
I've done that a million
germs
times
or diseases
in my life.
and it didn't get me high. I mean, I felt bad and I was like, you know what? I'm going to lay this down for a minute. And I didn't smoke for about a month. I think I smoked again right after a month had passed. And that first toke after you haven't had any for a month.
It's like huge. Yeah.
Felt great.
Yeah.
And I looked at my wife and I was like, you cannot let me get back on this train because it felt so good. I'll think, oh, it's going to feel like that. And it doesn't. You get on that slippery slope of now we're doing it every day and now it's not even getting me high anymore and blah, 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 blah. So I have to be real careful with that because that's my...
I'm exactly right there with you. I
love
it. I had some shit I was dealing with last year and I quit smoking pot. And I was, a daily smoker for years. I quit smoking for 3 months. Felt fantastic. It was so great to have my brain back and my clarity. And then I went to the Burning Man festival.
Oh.
And people were doing like, all kinds of drugs.
Right.
And I thought, well, I'll smoke a little weed there.
Right.
So then I got back on it. And then a few months ago, it was just depressing me. And it was just, it was compounding my my anxiety and
which you don't think about. You think, oh, it's laxing me out. You don't realize that it's doing that.
And I've always thought, that it relaxes me and helps me think of jokes, but it hasn't helped me think of jokes. I think it's held back my thinking. So now I'm like 2 weeks since I haven't smoked any. And,
good for you.
I'm 10 years off the booze, and I really like not smoking pot.
Yeah.
And I used to be like such an advocate for it.
I'm the same way. And look, I would never tell anybody else what works for them. I mean, do you, but it really, I was noticing, and my wife was having to repeat things to me. 3, 4, like, Jennifer, we just talked about this. And I had no recollection, not only of not talking about it, but of what I said in response to it. I was like, wait, I said that? What?
Yeah.
So once it got there, I was like, okay, it's just not doing what it did before. And I don't know if it's because of my age. I don't know if it's because what I was smoking when I was a kid. This shit now is it's broccoli with glitter on it.
Yeah.
It's so strong.
When I lived in Amsterdam, it's so many genetic modifications that it's like too strong.
Yeah,
and,
it's a lot. And vaping. I mean, if you got Acapulco Gold, Maui Wowie, Alaska Thunder fuckweed, the best shit you could find, that's going to be about 27 to 30% of THC. The lowest THC vape pens are 60-something%.
Yeah.
And some of them are 90%. So you're talking about just increasing 3 times the best weed you've ever smoked.
Yeah.
And I'm sucking on it all day long. Of course I can't remember what the hell I talked to you about. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm lucky I'm wearing pants.
I remember people used to make fun of ragweed. Ragweed was like the best.
Ragweed was the best.
Yeah, you could like
ditchweed.
Share a joint with people.
Yeah, look, you had to get the seeds and the stems out of it. What I used to do is just put it all in a coffee grinder and grind it all up, seeds, stems, and all, and then just roll joints with it. And we got teased about it, but and for a long time, what I was doing was taking that ditchweed, and then I would buy a little thing of keef when I would go to San Francisco, right before it was legal everywhere, and I had a prescription. And I would get that little thing of keef and just sprinkle a little keef on my ditchweed so that it would get me high and feel really good. But I also think that what was so great about weed when we were younger, because I think we're very similar in age, was that you weren't supposed to be doing it. Right?
It was the criminal act of it made it really exciting.
Yes,
and fun.
That's what I'm saying.
And like getting on planes with it.
Yes. Oh my God. I would tuck it up in my hoo-ha and get to Oklahoma with it and be like, I'm a genius.
Yeah. It felt like you were like a spy or something.
Accomplishment. Yeah.
I'd always put it in my underwear, like right on, on where my pubes are. Cause like they would, before those machines.
Yeah, they would wand you.
Yeah. And like, it was great.
Yeah, I remember when I was living in San Francisco, early 2000s, and they came out with smell-proof Ziploc bags. So they were these thick double Ziploc on them, and you could really put all the flour you wanted in them, and it did not smell. And throwing that into my underwear, you know what I mean? And getting on a plane was like,
well, that's funny.
This is the greatest thing ever.
I lived in San Francisco in the 90s, and I remember getting on airplanes with really smelly weed, and I'd have to like fan my crotch so nobody can smell.
Yeah. And now it's just everywhere. And I'm becoming one of those old people that's like, ugh, can we not smell weed here? Do we have to smell weed everywhere?
Well, it was cool. Like you're saying, it was cooler when it was illegal. Like in Florida, we used to get this stuff called baby weed, or we called it infant dope. And that was because you had to hold the guy's baby while he put the weed on the scale.
You know what's so funny? I lived in Orlando for about 3 years, working down at the downtown Disney had an improv club. And so I worked there. We would do improvised shows, 5 shows a night. And so like, whose line is it anyway kind of stuff. Audiences yelling stuff out. We were doing it. And so I lived in Hunter's Creek, which is a little subdivision near Kissimmee, right by Orlando. And I would meet my weed guy at Gatorland.
I love Gatorland. Oh my God.
Meet him
so you'd like pull into the parking lot?
Yeah, I would pull in the parking lot, and he would, you know, he had an old jalopy kind of car that you could hear coming from 6 miles away, and he'd roll up, and he was such a sweet boy. I don't even think I knew his name. He was in my phone as like weed guy, and he would show up and he'd be like, man, how you doing? I was like, oh, good to see you. You know, we'd shoot the shit, like whatever. And he'd be like, oh man, I got that book you asked me to give you. And he'd hand me a book, and inside the book, you know, was the stuff. And okay. And then I'd be, oh wait, I got that other book I took from you. And I give him the book from last week. And you know,
we would exchange weed in a bookmobile.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was like the reading rainbow. And it was fantastic. And that was the kind of weed you had to take it home. And remember, you had to have a tray. You'd separate out all the seeds and the stem. You had to kind of crush it up in your hands and stuff. Now you got to handle it with tweezers because you'll get keef all over your hands and mess it all up. It's a whole different thing now. So back in our day.
Yeah, it's funny because
before all this legalization.
Now, I think it's like alcohol, like there's beer and there's wine and then there's hard liquor.
I mean, you can get it in Florida the same way you could get it in California. You have to have a prescription, but I mean, I get it down in Louisiana. When I lived in Amsterdam, it was like the weed is too strong, like 2 hits, and then you're just. I was just in Amsterdam and had never been, and of course, and I'm with my mom, and I was like, look, we're going to a dispensary. I'm going to go find a little coffee shop. We're going to find it. And my mom was like, okay, it's fine. She's trying to act like she's cool, mom, right?
Right.
And we get to the place. It was just whatever was right off because we were on a cruise ship. So whatever was right there, just in the square. And I bought a big old joint.
The De Koning?
And there were so many of them. Literally, I just stopped at the first one. I bought it. It was €9 for this one joint. And I bought a space cake. I ate half the space cake, which was actually delicious. It tasted like a raspberry flavored Twinkie. It was actually quite yummy.
Nice.
And then smoked this joint. And I kept offering it to my mom. No, I'm fine. I'm smelling it. Right. She's trying to be cool. And then we start, and I'd never been to Amsterdam. We're walking, and there were mushroom stores. Yeah. And I mean, you could get anything. And there's all these little shops and all these people everywhere. And I almost got killed by a person, almost hit me with a bike. I was like, what the fuck did a bike just almost hit me? So it was really just
They hate when tourists walk in the bike
lanes. They do. Yeah. They hated me. And I was just oblivious because I'm so stoned and everything's coming at you. And it was just, and it's a beautiful city. And it's such a fun little area to be in that square where everything is. And then the munchies kicked in, and I found a place that was selling these little bubble waffles that they would then they would dip it in chocolate, like the kind of chocolate that forms a shell. And then they would put all these Kinder bars on top of it.
Nice.
And heat it up and then, drizzle the white chocolate. Oh my, I'm literally like, I have my face in this thing and my mother was like, well, do I get a bite? I was like, yes, I gave her one bite and I ate the rest. That's the greatest city to get the munchies in. Like it was all just so lovely and wonderful. And I should have known then that I was on the way out. that was to that was my little last hurrah. That's what I like to think about as my last time doing it, because it wasn't, but it should have been.
Right. My father visited me when I was living in Amsterdam, and I thought, it'd be great to get high with my dad. And we went to a coffee shop, and he got high and just a few puffs, and he was rambling. And I was like, oh, this isn't as cool as I thought it would be. But then I just did a tour in Europe in November, and I was back over there. And I was like, God, there's so many like drunk, wasted people walking around Amsterdam. And I didn't notice it 20 years ago when I lived there, because I was one of those drunk wasted people. Yeah.
That's what happens. I don't think when you're in it, you don't even realize what's happening, and then you get out. And
you're saying with the smell, when you're like puffing, sneaking, hits.
And then I'd go into some place and they'd be like, "Oh, you reek," and I'd be like, "No, I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't even smell it on me." And I was just constantly, I was like Pigpen on the Peanuts. There was just like a little aroma of weed all around me all the time.
Well, I think I'm sure you feel the same way. It's made me sharper as a comedian. I have a better Rolodex of stories and jokes in my head.
For sure.
I'm glad to not have the depression that I was having for the last year. It was just,
and it was causing me anxiety. I was like, I would toke and then, feel like I was going to almost come out of my skin. Like it wasn't doing the thing I started taking it to do.
Yeah.
And so, once I was sort of self-aware enough to realize that, I was like, okay, I can put this down. This is going to be okay.
So how long has it been since you stopped?
I have not toked again since February 15th.
Okay.
So almost another month. Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're great. We're
rocking and rolling, trying to do it.
And how has your life improved other than
I mean,
less agitated with your partner?
Yes.
Your
And
wife?
and
Is it a
PS,
wife or a
yes. Well, we haven't really officially gotten married, but we call each other wife. You know what it is? It's that I didn't notice I was agitated with her. If you'd asked me, I'd have been like, "Oh my God, this is the least agitated I've ever been with another person."
Yeah.
Because we've only been together for about 9 months.
Yeah.
So, it's not even like, if you had asked me, I'd have been like, "Oh no, this one's so easy. I don't even really need this pot,"
Yeah.
But she was broke down one night and was like, "You're just, I don't want to. You have a very short fuse," which is true. But I didn't think I had the short fuse with her.
Yeah.
It was just a short fuse about things I would get angry with in general. My mother.
How much
would piss
anger
me
are you
off,
walking around with?
I mean, I guess it was a lot.
Because I think it's something I've realized that I think I'm such a nice person, but I do think I got a lot of anger.
When something hits me the right way of being amped up, it and comedian lends itself to that, right? If I get going on a rant, it's gonna be funny, even though you're like, wow, she's really angry about this thing that doesn't cause anger in anyone else, but it would be funny, and so I always let myself feel that. I never tried to squash that down.
Yeah.
And now I'm realizing, oh, you don't have to freak out because the Albertsons doesn't have the brand of cereal you want. You're going to be okay. Go get some Frosted Flakes. They'll get the Golden Smacks back. Calm down. But I get.
Yeah, I think that for me, the weed was definitely, I thought it chilled me out. I think looking back on the last couple of years of my life, I think I may have overreacted a few times.
Oh, very few.
To a few,
But and I
incidents.
think that also, one of my best friends, the kid who opened for me on the road, had a very prolific drinking problem. He was just drunk all the time. He drank everything all the time, and when he was drunk, I never wanted to deal with him. Now, when he wasn't, best friend, loved him, could have talked to him for hours. But once you see someone sort of fucking themselves, and I saw him doing that, and I was like, oh. Mm-hmm. And then you start thinking, oh, well, I do something that thwarts me as well. Why is mine different than his? And when you start sort of being real with yourself and realizing it's not different than that, even the other night, I was like, I'm in Vegas. Maybe I could toke a little. And then that Nick Swartzen story comes out. Did you see that?
No, what happened?
They dragged him off stage because he I guess took too many gummies in Colorado, and he was not, the videos that he's just not making sense. He's not even completing sentences. He keeps saying like, all right, I'm going to do this. Here we go. No, I got an impression. Here we go. And he did that for 6 minutes before they were like, okay. And they pulled the plug on him. They turned the lights back on. They pulled his microphone, and the GM of the theater comes out and is like, we're sorry. We're going to refund everybody's money, whatever. And later Swartzen's like, I'm sorry. I got too drunk and had too many gummies in the altitude and whatever, but I thought, oh, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to ever have people. I know what it costs to go out for a night. You've gotten a babysitter, you put on your clothes, you whatever, all the things people go through to show up in that room, and you're going to And you can hear whoever's videotaping it is like, oh God, I'm so uncomfortable for him. Oh God, I don't even want to watch this anymore. Is someone going to do something? Like you can hear the panic in the person who's videotaping it. And I just thought, oh, that's a real good reminder that nope, I really should just save it for, I'm sure I'll toke on 420. Yeah. I'm sure
if I'm such a privilege to do this in the life that we have, and people dream of being in this business. I did a gig 2 months ago in this casino in Northern California, and they do like a monthly gig there. And it's a Native American casino, really, really beautiful area in Crescent City. And the people after the show were like, oh my God, you were so great. And then the more people I talked to, apparently the comedian the month before had taken something and he repeated the same jokes like 3 or 4 times. The guy was so wasted. Ugh. And the fact that I didn't repeat jokes, they thought that, I was.
That's so funny. That's so funny. God bless really him for leaving you a low bar to get over. Yeah. But yeah, that's it. And I'm very lucky that I have not had one of those situations where I have been, I don't usually get messed up before a show. That's what I'm going to be funny so that after the show I can, do what I do. Yeah. I have gone on stage high before.
When I was like 20, when I was in my 20s, I know I had a few really wasted shows. Yeah. That, I thought I was one of the Rolling Stones. Yeah. I thought I had just been separated from the band and I was eventually going to catch up to them.
I have a theory that all comedians secretly want to be rock stars and they can't sing or they can't play an instrument. So they do this.
I was good friends with Mitch Hedberg and I think, wow. He and I had it too. Just the real romanticism about being the wasted rock star, and that partying was part of it.
Yeah. And look, I'm glad.
And being older and
aren't you glad you did that though?
Yeah.
Like I'm glad that I did that when I was young and that I didn't do anything. Like I feel like I got in just under the wire. I feel like they were like, look, by 50, you got to have this figured out, whatever. And I like scooched right on in. I like slid right on into that. Like I was, I was 100 pounds heavier. I mean, I was a big girl. I was diabetic. My legs were all swollen out. I was having all kinds of problems and bullshit. My eyes were fucked up. And I got everything under control. And once that all happened, you don't realize how bad you feel until you feel better. Yeah. If you had asked me at that weight and at that time, I'd have been like, fuck yeah, my life's great. I eat what I want. I smoke what I want. I fucking tell jokes. I travel the world. This is great, right? And then you start feeling better and you start getting everything under control and like really, oh, now I'm not on insulin and now I don't have swollen legs and I'm not, I'm not all fucked up all the time. And this is better. It really is. So much better. But if you had told me that then, I would never have listened to you.
I feel the same way about when I was younger partying. I was like, this is the life I dreamed of having.
Exactly.
But that's the amazing thing about being a human being that none of the other animals have is that we have the ability to change our habits and our behavior. Yeah. I never imagined myself not drinking alcohol and not partying.
Yeah, and I'm the same way.
Not smoking weed. So to be sitting here now, like with total clarity and having a nice conversation with my friend, like this is actually much nicer than being zoned out.
And the truth is that if you, because I've gone back over the pandemic, I was just smoking so much. I was convinced we were all going to die. Yeah. And I just, that vapor pen stayed in my mouth. And I did some podcasts and I went back and watched them. And if you had asked me at the time, how did that go? I'd have been like, great. It was so much fun. We just did a killer podcast. And then I go back and watch it and I'm like, it's kind of pathetic. It's kind of sad to watch me be that. And clearly I was just sad and upset and whatever, but, and sort of trying to get through it. And if you watched it, you wouldn't have necessarily known how fucked up I was, but it was. I know I was there. And so it's so nice to now know that I can be just as funny and just as creative and just as energetic, if not more so, without that stuff that I thought was giving me all those things.
Yeah. Like I thought it was my spinach for Popeye. Yeah. Know? And I think I was just masking insecurities and self-hatred.
Absolutely. And also just like quieting that voice in your head that says, do you really think you can get out there in front of 2,000 people and keep their attention for an hour? Right. And to sort of give me the fuck, I can do anything, feeling that I had on that was all of it. And so I was really worried that like, I'm going to stop smoking weed and it's not that I won't be funny, but I won't think of those weird some of the shit you thought of when you were stoned was really right. Didn't you write a couple of things that you were like, God damn, I'd have never thought of that if I weren't really high at the time. And now I end up telling the stories about when I was really high and they're funny, but you've got to sort of skirt around the part of it that's like sad that you were having to do that. So.
Yeah. But I think you're like me. You always want to kill and have a great show. And I think when some young comedian before you like steals your thunder and you're a little too high or whatever, then it's those feelings of not being perfect and humiliation that makes you change.
Yeah, I agree. And, and also, my wife is such a sweet little tenderhearted human being that when she said to me, like, you're not the same person when you do that. And it scares me.
Yeah.
When she looks me in the eye and says that, I have to hear that. I have to be like, fuck, I love this woman. This is the person who loves me. Like, what am I doing if I'm scaring her? That's not what I want to be doing. That's not I don't want her to be worried that I'm, away from her and just toking up and all those things, And so, and she always knows if I'm stoned or not. Like it's not like I could quickly have a toke and then run back to her and, suck on a mint and everything would be fine.
Yeah.
That's, and who wants to live like that? I'm not 26. I'm not trying to, have this secret little life and do what I want and then lie to everybody. I want to be authentic and feel genuine in my emotions and in my feelings and in my love for her. And so, it was kind of a no-brainer, but not easy.
Now, tell me, how did you meet your wife? So she's from Mississippi and you're from Louisiana?
And we met in Venice, Italy.
What?
We had never. I know. I was doing a cruise going from Venice all through Croatia and Rome and all this. And it was a gay cruise, but those gay cruises are all boys. There's like, 2 token lesbians and they're a couple and whatever. So I took my mom on the trip with me and thought, oh, this will be fun. My mom and I can hang out and there'll be gay boys at the show and we'll kiki with them for a little bit. And then we'll be able to like, shop and have some mother-daughter time and do our thing. And Randall, the guy who owns the company that I was working for, he owns Vakaya. It's a gay travel group. And he was bringing his mom on the trip. And his mom's from Slidell, Louisiana. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. Our mamas can Ryan, you and I can go have a drink while our mamas have like lunch or whatever.
Right.
And then his mom didn't want to fly by herself. So she brought her niece with them, who is now my wife, Brooke. And she brings him on the trip and they're on the trip together. And 5 minutes onto the boat, I meet them and I assumed she was straight because she was, talking about her kids and, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh, she just came with the mom to be on the, my mom's straight too. Here we are. And we're all allies. It's all going to be fine. And then we didn't stop talking. Our eyes never left each other. Like it was just one of those, sort of like, and then I start finding out she's from Mississippi and blah, blah, all her story and all of this. And I think we kissed on the boat, but that was it. Like it was, I wasn't in my head. She lived in Mississippi. I live in California. This
wasn't a life-changing kiss.
It was. I really, really was into her, but I also thought, how is this going to work? I don't want to get into another long distancey, blah, blah, blah. And at the time I was in that sort of phase of my relationship where I was like, I'm going to date a bunch of people. I I was like a serial monogamist for a very long time. And I was like, ugh, can I just be a slut for a little minute? Can I just sleep with several people? I'm gonna be in my hoe phase. And I was about 3 or 4 months into that when I met her. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to talk to anyone else. I don't, and it was very, I feel like I kept kind of pushing her away a little bit because I was scared of how much I liked her. I didn't want to like her as much as I liked her. And then as it started to become, we were on the phone morning till night. We were falling asleep on the phone with each other. We were constantly talking and constantly making plans to see each other and all of this. And finally, I was just like, okay, what are we going to do here? And she had kids in Mississippi that were with her ex-husband. And so she didn't want to be far away from them. She didn't want to move all the way to California. And I get that. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm from Louisiana. Let's get a house in New Orleans. We can do that. I can have a place in New Orleans and a place in LA. I've done that. Let's do that. And she's like, New Orleans is such a big city and so kind of scary. And I was like, okay, what about Baton Rouge? That's, another hour up the I-10. How's Baton Rouge? And she's like, okay, I could do Baton Rouge. And my parents live in Baton Rouge and my brother and sister-in-law live in Baton Rouge and my nieces and stuff. So there would be people there for her to not be alone when I left. And so we got a house in Baton Rouge, and then we came back out to California, and we're moving apartments in California to something that we both picked out and such. So we're going to be bi-coastal if you consider the Mississippi River a coast. So
I do.
I'm okay with it.
It's the middle coast.
Yeah, and so we've been going back and forth, and we're usually about 2 weeks in each place. The 2 weekends.
And you can afford to put something down and buy a house there, right?
Yes, you can. Yeah. Yes, you can.
Nice. Now, I want to know about your career as an actor. Like, you seem to get like great roles, and you seem to be working all the time.
I do. I've really lucked into some fun little parts. I think because of my look, I get work. When I had long hair and was sort of a more feminine version of myself, it didn't work. And then I cut all my hair off and went with a mohawk, and they were like, oh, great. With this we can work with, because apparently to play a lesbian, you need to look like a lesbian. So, I've gotten a lot of those kind of parts and fun little character roles where they just want somebody that looks, sort of different or is an other or whatever. And, I've gotten to work with some amazing people. I mean, I did an HBO show with Melissa Leo, who was an Oscar winner. I did 3 or 4 episodes of that and just learned so much about, because camera acting is a different beast than stage acting. I mean, even than stand-up,
So in what way? And what do you keep in mind?
Well, I think, in stand-up or when you're on stage, you're trying to reach that person in the back. And when you're on TV or in film, that the person in the back is right here. That camera is right here. So you don't have to. I always say it's easier because you don't have to do as much. I can just react and I don't have to mug with my face and make big gestures and project my voice. I can just do the subtle things that humans do. And so to me, it feels like it's easier than being on stage. But I've looked into some good little parts and gotten on some shows that I like. Some of the things I've done, you're like never going to see them, and you should never see them. They're forgettable. But I had a little part on The Righteous Gemstones, which was super crazy good and fun. I did Curb Your Enthusiasm, super great.
Now that's where you just kind of improving and riffing.
Yeah.
Curb Your Enthusiasm,
on Curb and on Righteous Gemstones. Yeah,
that seems like the dream acting job.
It was, and I was intimidated by it at first. And I was trained in improv. That's what I did first. And I had a scene with Richard Lewis and a scene with Larry. And it was intimidating. And I didn't think I was going to get the part because the premise of the part was that Larry moves in next door to a battered women's shelter. And I'm one of the battered women. And, Larry's line is like, you look like you could take care of yourself. Like, who was hitting you, right? And so, in the audition, I just socked him in the stomach when he said that. I just got angry and hit him, and I thought Larry Charles was going to come out of his chair. He was dying laughing that I had done that. And I was, afterwards, he was like, thank you, whatever. And I was like, yeah. Like I didn't drop this sort of tough woman
Yeah.
persona the whole time because everyone else in the lobby looked like a fucking linebacker. I was like, if I'm going to book this part, I gotta really commit to this. And, so when I got the part and I was so excited, and Larry told me later on set that the reason I got the part was I have a big chest tattoo, and I was wearing, I guess, something V-neck, and he could see that chest tattoo and he thought, oh God, she's the real deal. Like she's got a tattoo on her chest, And so I called my mother and I was like, that tattoo you told me not to get that would never get me anywhere, that was gonna, guess what it just got me? A part on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Yeah. Score for me. So.
All-time classic show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do to prepare for roles?
Not a lot, I'm going to be honest, unless it's something very dramatic or something that I would need to research the historical accuracy of. And that happens once in a blue moon. But I just sort of go with what my gut reaction is. I try to make a big choice about the character. If it's something funny, if it's something serious, I just kind of read it and do it and see where the chips fall. So when I did the audition for The Mandalorian, they gave me fake sides. I didn't even know what I was auditioning for. It just said a streaming show on a streaming platform, a Marvel show on a streaming platform. And I was like, what the hell is that? I don't follow any of that shit. So I was like, okay. And the sides were all about like figuring out who's infiltrated the White House and blah, 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 blah. Right. And so I'm telling it to my buddy. I'm like, I don't even know what show it is. What show could it be? Is there a Marvel show coming out? And he's like, oh, I bet it's Dark Knight. I bet you're going to be in Dark Knight, blah, 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 right? And then I get a notice that I've booked it, and the script comes in, and the script is coming to me from George Lucas Films. And I'm like, what?
Well,
what did I book? So I'm calling my manager. I'm like, what did I book? And he's like, I don't even know. It just says George Lucas Films on my end too. So I didn't even know what show I was on when I booked it. And then I figure it out and they send me the script and I'm like, oh, so now I have to go, and I'm in season 3. So now I got to go back and watch seasons 1 and 2 of this show. Yeah. Of this show I've never seen. And to me, Star Wars was always hard to follow anyway. And now you've put everyone in a helmet. So now I don't even know who's fucking talking. So it was very difficult to sort of maneuver what that was and figure out the storyline. But once Luke Skywalker showed up and the Yoda, I was like, I know him. Okay, I know what's happening now. All right, I got it. And that was absolutely the greatest project I've ever worked on. Jon Favreau was there on set and so super cool. And Bryce Dallas Howard directed the flippin' thing. And it was just, Lizzo and Jack Black were like in the episode. So at lunch, I'm at a table with Lizzo and Jack Black. I'm like, this is the greatest job I've ever, I can't believe they're paying me for this. And it was super spectacular. So every once in a while, one of those, just falls into my lap and it happens. But I think that, I would love to write something for myself that got picked up, and I have a little pilot script. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it all goes. But I don't, I feel like you and I were raised on those multicam kind of sitcoms, those, the Roseanne and Cheers and things that they don't do TV like that anymore. And so there's no studio audience. There's no, it's all done a totally different way. So even when I was on Curb Your Enthusiasm, I'm like, oh my God, that was so funny. And so you say something that you think is so funny and then nobody reacts because they have to be quiet because it's being filmed, and there's not that audience reaction. And then you finish and they laugh and you're like, oh, thank God. Okay. So it was funny. Yeah. And they're like, yes. Oh my God, it was so funny. We were trying to stop ourselves from laughing. And you're like, as a comedian, you're killing me with that. But it's what you have to do. And so.
That's awesome. Well, I hope I get to act on a long running classic television show with you one day.
Well, if I ever get a classic long running television show, you are definitely fucking on it, Tom Rhodes. You are.
Jen, I love you so much. Now tell me, what is the greatest advice you've ever been given as an actor?
As an actor. I mean, probably just to treat the audition like you already got the part, right? So you don't need to save anything. Like, oh, they'll give me direction, or if I'll do it this way, and if they don't like it, they'll tell me to do something else. That's not it. You got to go in there making a choice, like you know how this part is going to go, and just make that choice and commit to it, and let the chips fall where they will.
Okay, and what's the greatest advice you've ever been given as a comedian?
I mean, I've gotten so much advice. So many good people have said things to me. But I think really it's something Brad said to me, which is like, it matters if it's funny to you. If you think it's funny, then you're going to sell it as something funny, right? If it doesn't matter if somebody else reads your joke and goes, I don't get it. I don't think that's funny, whatever. It's what you think is funny, and it's got to be your voice. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
I love it. Well, Jen, I love you very much. Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for coming over here and having a
Thanks for having me.
This
is lovely.
Yeah, and one day they're going to knock this building down and there'll be a baseball stadium here.
I know. Isn't that
we're probably sitting in
second base.
Yeah, who knows where. Anyway, I love you, and long may you run, my friend.
Yes,
long may you run.
Thank you, babe.
Hooray for humanity.